First of all, I just want to say that micromobility, I'm not going to tell you that it's going to replace all car and van journeys for everyone, but I would like to that when we talk about transport decarbonisation, that we think beyond cars and vans, whether that's tailpipe emissions or their full life cycle emissions. I'd also like to just say that I'm someone who lives in a city. I think in order of transport mode I use, I walk, often with a dog, referring back to your slide there, Gunny. Thank you for putting that in. I drive. My commute to work is a 200-mile round trip from Bristol to the University of Warwick. There's no other way of doing that apart from car. I cycle and I train. They were my modes of transport to get to London today. And I very occasionally use a bus, all depending on distance, convenience, and cost. So what do I mean by micromobility? There's no set definition for micromobility. As far as I'm concerned, it is lightweight. That was brought in this morning. It is low speed. It is zero emission. Most importantly, it is fit for purpose and really for short journeys. It can be moved for moving people and can be moved for moving goods. It can be privately owned. It can be leased. It can be shared. What the vehicles look like, we've got bikes, we've got e-bikes. Let's call them electric assist pedal cycles to avoid confusion. We've got cargo bikes, we've got e-scooters, we've got accessible vehicles, we've got last mile delivery vehicles, we've got electric mopeds, we've got microcars. Basically anything smaller than a car can be considered in my mind as micromobility. They're a key part, particularly of the future of urban mobility. I'm here presenting to largely what I'm assuming is the automotive industry today. It's going to feel like a bit of a rant, I think, for the majority of what I've got to say, but there's a big opportunity, I feel, at the end of my rant. So we all know transport is the UK's largest emitting sector. Cars and vans are 69% of road transport emissions. That's 70 megatons of CO2, according to some data. What you might not know is 72% of car trips in the UK are less than 5 miles. That accounts for 15% of the total car mileage. So 15% is from journeys less than 5 miles. Why are people getting in their cars to do that? And if you broaden that out to 10 miles, that's a third of all car mileage and therefore car emissions. Logistics, building on what Mark said earlier, this is DPD numbers, not Royal Mail numbers, but it's 63% of DPD emissions are last mile operations, your pickup and collection. It's a big part of what is their logistics emissions. Beyond emissions, air quality, we've spoken before. The number I've got here is by 2035, the cost, the health and social care costs due to air quality is going to be 5.3 billion. And from a congestion point of view, again, not really to do with decarbonisation, it doesn't matter if you're in an autonomous car or an electric car, the traffic is the same. It's 115 hours lost. 4.9 billion estimated annual cost to the economy. So on to micromobility. Where are we in the UK with micromobility? If you've we've all come to London today, and in London it's a bit of a different picture to the rest of the UK. In here, if you look outside, it looks like it's booming. You've got bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters, the Lime bikes. I've had some interesting conversations with today with people. E-scooters, and they're becoming the preferred choice. London's had a 26% increase in cycling since 2019. That's a huge boost. 1.33 daily journeys. That's equal to a third of tube journeys are now done by bicycle in London, which is absolutely brilliant. However, the rest of the UK is a very, very different picture. London has strategically, through long-term planning and investment, bullied through by Boris Johnson against fierce criticism, built a truly impressive cycling network to be proud of globally, protected cycle lanes, low traffic neighbourhoods. I cycle here today across London, and it was such a stark contrast to other places I commute, Bristol, Birmingham, Coventry, which are frankly terrible and terrifying. So the UK, broadly, excluding London, has very poor modal share compared to the rest of Europe. The West Midlands is the worst in the UK, if anybody's interested in that. Cycling infrastructure projects are not built to any long-term strategy. Funding is available for a year. There's no long-term investment plan, and so you end up with these small, unconnected projects resulting in an incomplete network, inconvenient to use, often unsafe to use, and then you get criticism about why it's underutilised. We built the cycle path, it's not being used because it's not been fit for purpose, it's not part of a bigger strategy. Other key reasons for people not using it more is safety, exacerbated by this poor infrastructure. There's also a very strong car culture, which we'll go into a bit more later on. Car dependency, motor normativity are words which are spoken about quite a lot these days. People are becoming more reliant on these cars. We've got housing developments, shopping developments, which only consider the car as a mode of transport. Further added to by the previous government's attempt to win some voters with its plan for drivers, which came out and then quickly disappeared shortly after that, which was a wonderful attempt to secure some car and van user voters. Media coverage is overly negative towards cycling, another form of micromobility. 400 pedestrians are killed in road accidents every year in the UK. This is seen as normal. No one calls for a ban on cars when a pedestrian is killed by a car. When very sadly a pedestrian was killed by a dangerously riding cyclist a few years ago, there was a national uproar about the dangers of cycling. Where's that for the 400 pedestrians killed every year? I was just chatting to Yanto earlier today about the debate over how fast an e-scooter should be allowed to go, should be limited to, physically on the vehicle, limited to it. Nobody is talking about setting a maximum speed for cars of 70 miles an hour, which is the legal limit as fast as you can go on a UK road. And other roads are a lot slower than that. But that's not under discussion anywhere in DFT as far as I'm aware. So what do we need to do to encourage uptake? I'm dividing the population into, well, the people who could cycle but don't. And you have the will not group and you have the cannot group. So I think the cannot group is possibly an easier fix. It's often quite physical barriers to them. Their journey is too far, or they're not fit enough. They don't know how to ride a bike. They have too much to carry. They don't own a bike. They can't afford micromobility, or they have particular accessibility needs. These are all physical things which can be solved by, so you used to ride a bike, now you can have an e-bike. That means you can get up that hill, you can go a bit further. Perhaps you need an accessible vehicle. Do you need more wheels? Do you need more power? Do you need better visibility? All those things are relatively easy things to fix. It is the will not group that is often harder to solve. They don't do it because they don't feel safe, which is a very good argument. They're not for me. I'm not a cyclist. I'm worried about this getting stolen. I don't want to get sweaty. I'm not a cyclist. I've got a car. Or as we mentioned before, I'm too embarrassed. I'm too ashamed to get onto it. It doesn't fit in with my image or my culture. They're much more difficult. None of these are insurmountable challenges, but they do require targeted intervention, behaviour change, and a cultural shift that needs to be driven at a national level. We've been doing a small project on campus, trialling some cargo vehicles. The campus is a population of 30,000, so it's like a small town, so we can run trials. It's largely private roads, so we can do autonomous vehicles. We can run e-scooters when they weren't sort of legal to use. And one of the things we've been doing is we've introduced some cargo bikes, and the team we were using it was running food delivery operations around campus, doing conferences, meeting support, and we told them we've got a pedal cargo bike, and they refused to get in it. Thought, I don't pedal, I'm not a cyclist, I can't do that. Fortunately, with this cargo bike, we said, well, it's actually got a throttle. And then they're, okay, I'll give it a go then. And they sit in it. Also, fortunately, there's nowhere else to put your feet but the pedals. So after we managed to convince them to get in it with the throttle, they all sat in it, the throttle's there, but the feet are on the pedals, and they just start using the pedals, and I'll stick with using the pedals. So there's this social barrier to getting in a pedal vehicle when actually it's fine. You just need to overcome that initial preconception that you don't want to pedal. This wasn't what the project was about, but it was a really interesting sort of side conclusion that we had. Now my rant on infrastructure. From an infrastructure point of view, the government very proudly announced £3 million for active travel spending across the next 2 years. That's for everyone, all the walking, all the cycling, all the scooting, all the wheeling, all the accessible access across England. Road spending is 80 times that per year. There's a 16-kilometre stretch of the A428 in Cambridge that is costing 1.15 billion alone. So 4 times the active travel spend budget for all of England is 4 times less than a 16-kilometre stretch of road in Cambridge. If we were serious about decarbonising road transport, we'd look at the 15% of journeys under 5 miles and invest a proportionate amount of funding into that. So that £300 million of active travel budget should really be more like £2 billion, and that's a number which has been asked for many years, but we're still getting nowhere near. Another potentially unpopular opinion I have, particularly for this audience. The UK's government industry support for decarbonising road transport is not about decarbonising road transport. It's lobbied by the car industry for the car industry. If it was truly about decarbonising transport, all that money should be pumped into public transport services, unfortunately not represented here today by any speaker, active travel infrastructure, and incentivizing mode shift to truly low-carbon transport. An example of this to encourage EV uptake until 2022, grants were available to buy your EV. And recently, I think Mark's alluded to £2,000 and £5,000 grants for buying your next EV van. There's nothing like that to buy an e-cargo bike or an e-bike still. Very different to other European countries. So other countries across Europe. We'll ignore the Netherlands as a complete extreme case. Not that they have the highest mode share of cycling in Europe, that actually belongs to Denmark. But a few of our European peers are on an exponential curve of e-bike uptake and use. In Germany, Germans buy 2 million e-bikes per year. In France, that number surpassed 1 million per year recently. In the UK, we've stagnated around 150,000. So less than 10%, 7% of the German market for a similar population, similar weather. And it's not just that volume of e-bikes. They're buying bikes which are 4 times the value. So they are high-valued modes of transport. Buying a quality product. And if you talk about car culture, then look at Germany. How many people here own a car which is from a German brand? And then you talk about car culture in the UK versus car culture in Germany, yet they are still adopting e-bikes as a valued mode of transport. Moving on to, more onto the opportunity, the good news, less of the rant. So 2 million high-quality e-bikes sold in Germany actually supports a huge domestic bicycle manufacturing industry worth €8 billion and employing tens of thousands of skilled people. That's not including the maintenance, the aftermarket support, the accessories, and all of that market. That's just the production of e-bikes is an £8 billion industry in Germany, largely supporting a domestic market. In France last year, I was really encouraged to see that they've announced a €55 million fund, I'm assuming equivalent to an Innovate UK Challenge Fund, to grow and reshore the bicycle industry there. Seeing this huge uptake in e-bike adoption, we can make this here. We used to make them here. Let's make them here again. Let's put in £55 million to grow that industry. Portugal, with no domestic market, saw this opportunity 10 years ago, and through this Portugal Bike Valley concept, are now the largest manufacturer of bicycles in Europe, with a lot of the European brands moving production from the Far East to Portugal. The opportunity there for the UK, even with our relatively low demand, we are the highest importer. We have the biggest trade deficit of bicycles in Europe. We are the highest volume importer of bicycles of all of Europe. And that's even with our, quite frankly, poor demand and use of low quality products. I've covered a lot of personal transportation here, but last mile is a key opportunity, not just from the supply side, but actually to normalise micromobility use. If big organisations like Royal Mail, Amazon, DPD, Every are choosing to use micromobility for logistics, not out of a personal choice but they're doing it because it's proven to be operationally cheaper and quicker to do the job, then that will hopefully get more people thinking, well, if Royal Mail are doing it, why can't I do it to go about my daily needs? So the industrial opportunity, I'd love to tell you that, that there's an £8 billion industry here, but it really depends on a big shift in demand. At WMG, we're about to kick off a study looking into the potential size and requirements of this industry, specifically for the UK. What's needed to get there from an intervention, be that on the demand side or the supply side, and what's the size of the prize. If you want to get involved in that, or you just want to see the results of that, please do get in touch with me. We're kicking that off as we speak, and due to be published later in the summer, which will hopefully get some of the automotive supply chain members, some of the OEMs looking into, well, should we be looking at micromobility and smaller vehicles? Thank you very much.